Hi, class. Let's start the chapter. Okay. This chapter, chapter 2, will talk about how economics issues affect the business. If you notice in the news, most of the time, the big part of the news, if you watch news, is about economics and economic situation because it's affecting the business in general, um, directly and indirectly to your business. What are you doing as a business? Now, in this subject, what we be learning is we need to learn about describe the basic economics. We'll explain what capitalism is and how free market works. We will compare the benefit and the negative consequences of socialism and communism, um, describe the mixed economy of Canada, and illustrate the significance of key economic indicator and a business cycle. Now, what's a capitalism and how free market works? Economics concepts are basis for the most major business decision. When things is booming or growing the market, companies internationally decide to come to that market. And you notice there are some countries, people prefer to do business, they shift their money there, do business there because of the economic reasons. Both globally and Canadian economy have an effect on a Canadian business. So if the rest of the world is booming, has its effect in Canada because of the export and import, and if the Canada is booming, there's also has effect on a business in Canada. Here, where the economics is about the study of how society chooses to employ the resources, factors of distribution, to produce the goods and service and distribute them for consumption among various competing group and individual. So there is a resources and there is a demand for the resources. If there is a booming situation, there's more demand. So they produce according to the demand, and we will talk about it later on. What we have economics, which is, there is two parts of it, microeconomics and microeconomics. In the macroeconomics is the part of economic studies that looked at the operation of a nation economy as a whole. The whole countries on the micro level is the part of economic studies that looks at the behavior or people and organization in a particular market. Let me give you a very good example. In a macroeconomic, a country might go through a recession, but the education sectors is booming because everybody's going the country, the macro level, recession, lots of unemployed, so they decide to go on education. So if you ask somebody's, how is the country economic-wise, they said it's in a recession. But if you ask somebody's in the business of education, how's your business of education goes, it's booming. So that's a micro level booming. Macro level, the whole country, the GDP and all these things. Now, it could be a store, it could be an individual, or it could be an organization, industries. If we look at that, it's it's micro level. If you look at everything as a macro level. The resource development, the study of how to increase a resource and creation of conditions to make better use of resource. For example, recycling. So the study of how to increase the resources through the technology or finding out more resources or and the creation of conditions where to make a better use of the resources. Now, the growth of economic and Adam Smith theory. Adam Smith is a Scottish economist and author of Wealth Nation, believed freedom was a vital to a wealth creation. If people could keep profit, they derive from, that's what is believed, from the land and business they owned and worked, the incentive to work harder was a powerful. So if I'm keeping the money and the revenues and whatever for myself from the land and or business that I'm doing, I have a tendency of working harder, generate more wealth. This incentive would then cause the economy to grow and prosper because I will do that, my neighbor will do that, everybody will do that, and the accumulations of it, the aggregations of it, is will make the economy prosper. Smith today is considered the father of modern economy or economics. So how business benefit the community? Well, Smith believed that people work for their own self-interest. Everybody wants to maximize their profit. But in doing so, or actually benefit the whole economy as a whole. So you do something to produce something to make a profit, but you sell it to a retailer, retailer will make more money on it and sell it to a consumer, and consumer will use it probably for developing more businesses and make more profit. So that helped the community to benefit and grow. So he believes in the invisible hand, which is turn self-directed gain into a social and economic benefit for all. Here, what Smith assumed that as people become wealthier, they would help others in the community who were less fortunate by providing jobs or goods and services for sale. That's where we see on extreme level what they do in USA follow this belief. Now there is another school of thought, which is we will talk about them. But here what we talk about is capitalism and how free market works. So what's capitalism is an economic system in which all or most of the factor of production and distribution are privately owned and operated for profit. The least the government owns operation, the closer to what you call a capitalism. And what we say here, that's what you see the medical sectors, the health sectors in USA is owns by private sectors. Many sectors is owned by owned by private. The free market, one in which decision about what to produce and in what quantity are made by the market. So when you have a free market, is you'd have a decision of what to produce and what's the quantity you will be producing in this case. How the price are determined? So I'm producing and I want to see my price at what price. Here where we look at the supply and demand. In the free market, the price are determined by negotiation between the buyer and the suppliers. You might find it here is $10. You find it the next store at $12. And when the negotiation happens, you go to the second one and you say, I found this $10 in the other store. So they will give you probably $10 or 11. That's by negotiation between the buyer and seller. But overall, when we look at it, if we look at the supply, which is the quantity of product that manufacturers or owners are willing to sell at a different price at the specific time. So if you're a supplier and you want to sell it, if you think the price is $10, you sell 2 units, but if the price is $15, you have a tendency to produce one more to sell 3 or 4 units or more. So the higher is the price, the more willing to supply, you're willing to supply. On other side, on the reverse, the quantity of product that people are willing to buy at a different price at a specific time. So the price if it goes higher, you buy less, but the price if it goes less, you buy more. It is about the value that you get according to your dollars. And here where we run to a market price, is the price determined by the supply and the demand. More supply, price cheaper, it goes down. We'll talk about it later on. But here where we talk about the equilibrium point. In the equilibrium point is the quantity demanded and the quantity supplied is equal at this case. What does that mean? Means if we said that you're selling a T-shirt at $5, you're willing to sell 5 of them. But as the price of the T-shirt goes high, you'll be willing to supply more. And so the supplier curve keeps going to the right side like this as the price of the T-shirt goes high. So if the price becomes 15, you're probably willing to supply 25. On other hand, in the demand, as the price goes higher, you demand less. So when the price is $5, you might want to buy 45 of them T-shirt. That's a lot of T-shirt. But when it reaches to $45, there where you say things are expensive, so I'm buying only 5 of them. So as the price goes up, your demand to purchase amount of quantities of T-shirt goes down. Now, if we put these together, what will happen? There is a point where these supply curve and the demand curve intersect, and this is the equilibrium. So the supplier at $15 is willing to supply 25, and the buyer is willing to buy 25 at $15. This is where the equilibrium point, where the amount of the suppliers and the demand is equal. Now, a competition within a free market. In a market, what we have something called perfect competition. We have monopolistic competition, and we have the oligopoly and monopoly. In the perfect competition, the market situation in which there are many sellers in a market and no sellers is large enough to tell or dictate the price. Many sellers, let's assume they sell same thing, and There is no one who dictates the price. Now, in the case of monopolistic competition, the market situation in which a large number of sellers produce very similar that the buyer nevertheless perceive as a different. So in this case, a large number of sellers produce a very similar product. It's like a gas. In the oligopoly, which is you have the perfect competition, then you have the monopolistic, and then you have the oligopoly, which is a form of competition in which just a few sellers dominate the market, like the fast food here. There is McDonald's, Burger King, Pizza Hut. Anyway, so in the food sector, KFC, these are kind of oligopoly that's happening. Now, in monopoly, a market in which there is only one seller for a product or a service, the good example is probably electricity, probably telco, although you see so many companies, but it is here in Ontario by Roger is the monopolist and he sells to other operations. In Manitoba, MTS, and he sells other operation and the other operation sells too. So it doesn't look like, but it actually is monopoly. One company is which one seller for a product or a service. So if we see here, monopoly is one, perfect competition is many. And from monopoly, we have oligopoly, we have monopolistic numbers of the sellers and perfect. The more the goes to perfect competition. Now, what's the benefit and limitation of a free market? Free markets allow open competing or competition amongst companies, which is that might lower the price, improve the qualities. In a free market, companies must provide customers with a quality product at a fair price with a good service to compete, or risk losing those customers to somebody else. In a free market, have provided opportunity for poor people to rise above poverty. They might be doing their own business because it's a free market. Nobody stops them from doing the business, so they can grow their own business. In a free market, have also brought inequality between rich and poor people. The rich get richer because he's establishing more businesses, and the poor get poorer because things get sometimes expensive. His income is not enough. So generated more inequality between rich and poor. They have led to greed, which if the government is not interfered, which often dictates how manager and owner act, not always at the best interest of the stakeholders. Because it's a free market, he might increase the product, he might cheat on the product, is not always at the interest of their stakeholders. Now, if we want to compare the benefit and the negative consequences of socialism and communisms, so we have a free market, we have socialisms, and we have communism. The socialism is an economic system based on the premises that some, if not most, basic business should be owned by the government so that the profit can be evenly distributed among the people. Is what we saw in some Eastern Bloc countries is socialism. What we see is Canada is mixed between free market and socialism. There is some businesses where generate profit, they take their profit and distribute it between people. The result are socially equality through economic redistribution. Generally, by the government through taxation. They tax probably sometimes the business people. However, this may take away the incentive to work from more profit due to the high taxation rate, which pay for a various government program. You have a tendency to work less if you think that most of your income going to go to the tax. So if you're moving from a bracket of a 20% to 50%, you have a tendency of not to move to 50% because they will tax you 55% or something. You want to keep a bracket of your income less than that, so you will be, so that there is a tendency for you not to work harder. Now, understanding the case of communisms, uh, this is the extreme of the free market and socialism kind of in the middle. Communism is an economics and political system in which the state, the government, makes all the economics decision and owns almost all of the major factors of production. No government so far being a communist, probably North Korea, one of them. The shortage may occur as the government has no idea what and how much to produce. People lose the incentive to work hard because they're getting paid by the government as the government takes most of their earning. Today, there is a trend to move toward the free market or socialisms mostly. The trend toward a mixed economy, and that's what we have in Canada, the free market economy, which is we have in USA, which is the capitalism, is an economy in which the market largely determines what good and service are produced, who gets them, and how the economy grows. In the command economy, or communism and socialism, an economy is which the government is largely to decide which goods and services are produced, who gets them, and how the economy will grow. Now, what we have, the mixed economy. Mixed economy could be a mix of a free market, which is a capitalism, and socialism, or the other side, communism and socialism, because the two extreme side, the free market, the capitalism and the communism. The mixed economy is economic system in which some allocation of resources is made by the market and some is made by the government. In Canada, we have a mixed economy. You know, the railway, the wheat board, the mail is owned by the government, but the telco, the retailing, the food store chains is a private, something like that. So it's a mixed economy. The health is the government, the education partially this and that also. Here, what I want you to take a look at it and have a good understanding how a comparison of economic system. We have the capitalisms in Canada, we have the socialisms, and actually it depends on the government, the liberal or more socialism. But let's assume Canada is not 100% capitalist, but it's close to capitalism. And then we have the socialisms in Sweden, we have the communisms in North America, and we have the mixed economy currently is in Canada. So Canada used to be capitalist during Brian Mulroney, during the Conservatives. It moves to more toward socialist during the Liberal government. Take a look at this. See the social and economics goals. Look at the motivation of workers, control, and the control over market. The other thing that you need to look at it is the choice in the market and the social freedom that comes in with these type of economy. Now, let's describe the mixed economy of Canada. The Canadian government goal is to grow the economy, but with the social equality for all the citizens. In other words, what's make Canada a good socialism approach versus other countries who are doing a bad socialism approach? The Canadian, what they do, government, they look at the different sectors of the business. If the business does not make enough profit, they don't privatize it, actually. They keep it because the most important thing is the quality of work that should be delivered. On other hand, the business that makes profit, they privatize it because once it's privatized, the private sectors have a tendency to improve their business to make more profit. So they privatize the profitable business, but they keep the non-profitable business to themselves to provide a better quality, because the minimum profitable business or non-profitable business, if you give it to the business people, they will cut the cost to make it profitable, means cut the qualities, cut the deliveries, all these things. So that's the right way of doing the socialism. And other countries is not doing it and do it properly. Is it probably what they do? They take over the profit ones and they give away the non-profit one to the private, and you will end up having bad business, bad quality of life, because business people are there to make profit. So you give them non-profit or very limited profit, they will try to make profit of it. So they cheat on it, or they give less qualities, or less services to make it profitable, which is not fair. So here in Canada, the Canadian government goals is to grow the economy with a social equality for all citizens. Government involvement include healthcare, education, business regulation, and telecommunication. The US is Canada's largest trading partner and has a great influence on our government and culture. So we cannot be 100% into socialism because they are affecting our business and vice versa. The government has passed many laws and regulation that helps to maintain the integrity of our Canadian culture. You know this. Do not call list. These days you have, when you go on one side, the cookies and all these things, they ask you for a permission. These are regulations that the government has passing recently. Due to the pressure to become a more competitive, many industries such as airline, banking, and transportation are being deregulated, and otherwise they will do a less profitable business or less quality to make profitable. The private sector industry are now competing with the government-funded institution in areas such as healthcare, education, and security. In education, you say government, colleges and universities, and private ones. They're competing with each other for delivering better quality work, education. The key economic indicators and business cycles. When we know the business is booming, when we know the economy is booming, when we is going through the recession. There is a key economic indicators. The gross domestic product, or GDP, the total value of goods and service produced in a country in a given year. So there is what you call gross national income, and there is a gross domestic income. They're two different, but the total value of goods and service produced in a country is what you call GDP. The productivity is about the workers can produce more goods and services than before in the same time. You compare to the previous period, leading to a decreased production cost. Maybe your cost goes down, or also lowering the price. Now, other indicator is the unemployment rate, which is now they call it employment insurance. You can find it from employment insurance, but it's the unemployment rate. The percentage of the labor force that actively seek work but is unable to find work at a given. So they're active to look at work, but they cannot find the work. This is the unemployment rate, not the ones who's not looking for a job. The four types of unemployment that happen is a fractional, we will talk about it, structural, cyclical, and seasonal. Now, the unemployment here you see is from goes up to 12%, not even 12%. It goes up and down yearly, and the lowest 2% was 2007. 2014 is the natural one, usually below 10 is 9, the natural unemployment. If goes low, there is an inflation, it's happening in the same case. There is something called price index. In the price index, we want to see the power of purchase. Individual make $1,000 in Canada can buy less goods and services than $1,000 in India, for example. Now, issues that we look at it is the inflation, which is the general rise of price of goods and services. And you know that a year before was $10 a unit, today is at $12. That's the inflation. That's what you call inflation. Now there's something called disinflation. And the disinflation is a situation in which the price increases are slowing down. So if you're expecting every year $2 goes up, you notice now every year $1.50 is slowing down. The rate of the inflation is decline. It's keep going the inflation, but the rate is going down. Now then you have what you call the deflation. A situation is a reverse of inflation, which is a situation in which the price are declining. There's not many events of that, but they do have a price decline. And then what you have, the worst case is a stagflation, which is a situation in which the economy is slowing, but the prices are going upgrade. We said in the early that if the economics is slowing, the price is supposed to go out lower. It's not low and going down. But sometimes the economy is slowing, but the price is going up. That's what you call a stagflation, which is bad. Then when we have the consumer price index, is the monthly statistic that measures the pace of inflation and deflation, whether it's going up or down. This is the CPI is called. And the Human Development Index, which is a newly added, which is a measure of a country progress that include wealth, health, and education. This is how they measure the progress of the country recently for the last 10 years with the Human Development Index. We said that there is a business cycle or economic cycle. The business cycle or economic cycle is the periodic rises and falls of occurs in the economics over time. Sometimes you see the housing industry, people building more houses. This is what it's a booming time. And people, when they slow down, this is slows down. One of the first indicators of boom is housing industries. If it's going up, that there is a booming. So what's a boom? Boom is a period of economic boom, bring jobs, growth, and economic prosperity. So there's lots of jobs, lots of growth, and lots of economic growth. During the recession is the 2 or more consecutive quarters, not 1, 2 or more. And a quarter means the 4 months in the decline, your GDP is declining. Less job, less growth, less booming. Economic. But the worst one is the depression when there is a severe recession. Keeps really depression happened in USA when the fall of prices of in the 20s and the economic was people losing prices, losing their jobs. In the 80s when the housing went through a problem. The government in Canada usually use the fiscal and monetary policy to keep the economy stable. So when there is a very booming, high booming, they don't want the inflation goes very high, so they use monetary fiscal policies. We'll talk about them maybe in the later about the chapter how they use these two tools to manage the boom and recessions side effect also. So in the boom, the cycle, business cycle, or the economic cycle, there is a boom, depression, and boom, and there is what you call a recovery. Recessions happening from boom goes down to that's a recession time. To go to the bottom, that's a depression, and then there is a recovery is happening and goes up again, and then a recession is happening. So the cycle is the affecting the GDP growth in general also over the time. So the summary is this: economics is the study of how society choose to employ resources to produce goods and service and distribute them for the consumption. There's two major branches, and in macro and micro. Macro is studies the operation of a nation's economy as a whole. The micro studies is the behavior of people, certain industries and organization in a particular market. Then when we have capitalisms and a free market, capitalisms is an economic system in which all or most of the means of production and distributions are privately owned and operated for profit, like the ones in USA. And the free market in which is one in which the decisions about what to produce at what quantity are made by the market itself, not by the government. On a case of the other side, which is the socialisms and the communisms, socialism is based on the premises that some businesses should own by a government, and communism, the government owns almost all the major production facilities and dictate what gets produced and by whom, like in North Korea. We are in Canada, have mixed economy, partly capitalist and partly socialist. Some businesses are privately owned, and we explain why they're privately owned, but taxes tend to be high to redistribute the income more evenly to the population. There is economic indicators that we need to look at it in order for us to understand whether we should invest more or less. Is like and there is a business cycle, which is economic indicators like GDPs and unemployment, inflation, productivities, and business cycle, boom, recession, depression, and recovery. This is the end of it. Thank you very much. End of